Hello, Body and Messiah. We're going to start this new year off with revisiting some old historical documentation. Well, we're going to cover and revisit locations that are through the Father's land, um, and we're going to do them in some very brief lessons. We're finding that a lot of people who may have just become members of Surgical Bible Studies and subscribe to it are in a valley still of a little bit of confusion because they have not seen some of the prior lessons that we had from 2 to 3 years ago that shows Africa throughout the Bible, right? So when we talk about videos that are associated with man's Israel, United Nations defined Israel as opposed to the actual promised land, right? Or what we call the land of Canaan, which is the actual promised land to the children of Israel. People are getting a little confused. So we're going to go back and briefly go over some of these particular areas that are mentioned throughout Africa and also the Bible so that people can understand that what we're talking about is based on historical, geographical maps of old and some of present. So we're not going to go over every single detail of the map because we've already done that a couple of years back or 2 or 3 years back. So it's on you, those who have come into subscribe to Surgical Bible Studies late in the game, to go back and look and study for yourself. Look, a lot of these maps are being, as I see, removed. Most of the pictures that we've held up from the videos from 2 to 3 years ago, it's hard to find some of these maps nowadays. I'm going to put a link out there in this lesson to the prior lessons. And we also have links to some of the maps, how you can get to the old ancient African maps. But some of them, like the 1747 map, it's hard to find that one. The Negro Land map that clearly states Kingdom of Judah. Now it still has Wihada on there on some of the maps from 1737. So please, Body of Messiah, most of those who are genuinely seeking the whole truth of Adonai's word, go back and research. This strong delusion is very strong, and the system is fighting against it every day. They're trying to shut down different books, remove them. Yeah, I understand that some of the books are very inappropriate for children, young children age, because it's also trying to glorify sexual immorality. But the things that are dealing with actual history, slavery, and even African history that they're trying to bury goes against God's standard. We have to worship Adonai in Ruach and in truth. So those of you who want to take the journey with us in revealing and sharing the truth with others throughout the world, throughout the diaspora, we have to continue on this path. The war that's going on over there, it's a lot of judgment that's going to happen in that region. And that's not what's prophesied for the entirety of the promised land or the land of Canaan. And we're just going to revisit so you will understand how the historical document proves that Africa is throughout the Bible. Now, the title of this lesson is going to be Historical Document Pertaining to the Promised Land. Now, it's going to be on you to go back and look at some of these videos, all right? First, we're going to visit Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10 talks about the kingdom of Babel, okay? And it also speaks of a region, a city called Akkad. It also speaks of Shinar, okay? It also speaks of the kingdom of Babel, right? We've shown in Surgical Bible Studies, if you go to TBON Lesson 2, which is Africa Throughout the Bible, that's the title of Lesson 2, no matter which part. TBON Lesson 2 is Africa Throughout the Bible, but specifically Part 8 addresses in detail these different regions that are throughout Africa, okay? So let's take Acadia for example. Acadia or Akkad, you'll see many people depicted as being up here, right? So up here in Iraq, the region of Iraq and Iran. Also Shinar, they'll depict it up there, okay? So I'm just sticking this here. The reason why I have question marks is because in old maps of the Bible, you'll see reference multiple times of the phrase Agades or Agades. I'm not sure exactly of the pronunciation, but this is how the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, pronounce Akkad. And in old maps of Africa, you'll see that same city or region is referenced throughout Africa with a Z on the end or S on the end, okay? So you'll see it throughout here. You'll even see down here in this region in an old map of Africa where they reference Acadia, okay? But it's stated on the map that the colonizers generate as a goddess, right? Now for Shinar. In Shinar, you will see, hold on one moment, let me get this one. Gotta get my other one for Shinar. You'll see where Shinar is also referenced by the name Sengar, Sengara, Senhar, Senkar, right? So in old maps of Africa, right around this region, you'll see Senkar or Sinar, all right? Referenced throughout here, all right? So you'll see around these areas this particular name. And these, once again, as I say, is the Greek way of saying Shinar. So what does this mean, Body of Messiah? All right, I'll tell you what I believe it means, all right? Now we're going to cover what is the kingdom of Babel. In the old map of Africa, you have Babel Melech. Let me go show you where that shows up at. Okay, Body Messiah, had to find my little card. So, Babel Melech was found here around Somalia, Ethiopia. Whew. I can get my little paper straight. As you can see right here. And this particular meaning, Babel Melech, means kingdom of Babel. Okay? So this is the kingdom of Babel, where it was located. And a lot of people are going to go, well, what about it being up here? Okay, I'm going to give the explanation, Tasha's explanation as to what this means. Okay? Tasha, I believe, because of the deep deception, there was possibly an attempt to change the region and the areas to make it seem as if it's not affiliated with the actual promised land. I believe, Tasha, okay, that these are the original areas. You know how some cities and towns can be named. One is named before another. So just say, for instance, there's a Geneva, Switzerland. Do you know in Alabama, there's a Geneva, Alabama, right? Geneva, Switzerland came before Geneva, Alabama. So I believe some of the descendants, when they moved to different areas or when that ruler ruled over the area, that some of the cities were named as the people moved that way or the ruler overtook other territories. Okay? So I do believe that these are the original because the origins of man is here in this region. Okay? country of Edom is in this region. So the origins of man. As we know, Nimrod ruled over the kingdom of Babel based on the book of Jasher. So this is a part of the origins of man. And the origins of man began here in this region. You have historical documentation now that backs it up, that coincides with the Bible. You also have it from all of the them digging up all the artifacts, them digging up all of the ancient bones of our ancestors throughout this region. The oldest human bones are found in this region. Okay? So, let that set with you for a while, Body of Messiah, so we can understand and move forward in truth. Africa is throughout the Bible. If you want to go look in detail at what we cover, you can go to TBON Lesson 2, Part 8, right? You can look at many others. Every lesson that I have for Africa throughout the Bible, we at Sajiko Bible Studies will put a link to the previous lesson and the lesson that comes afterwards, so you can go and look through it. Now we're going to cover a different region for the next part, okay? So hold on. Okay, so we're going to cover in here where there's a distinction being made between when Adonai calls the promised land the land of Canaan, right? So when we look in Genesis chapter 12, it's specifically Genesis chapter 10, verse 19. Adonai calls it the land of Canaan. And he's telling Patriarch Abraham, I'm going to give this to you and all your descendants, the land of Canaan. We go through in Sajiko Bible Studies where we trace Patriarch Abraham's travels throughout Africa, okay? And there are many cities that are mentioned throughout his travels. We see where Mamre is covered. There's a Beerah in an old map of Africa. There's Dan, which still exists today. There's a Goyim, which is in an old map of Africa. When you look in TBON, specifically lesson 6, we track his path, okay? In that lesson, we didn't mention Admah, but we know Admah is currently today located in Ethiopia, and it used to be called Nazareth or Nazareth, okay, in Ethiopia. So this right here proves the path in which our patriarch went. And many people, when they say the land of Canaan, they just say it generically. And they always try to place it up in this region. But if all these cities that are associated with the land of Canaan is throughout Africa, based on historical documentation, Body Messiah, keep your focus. Don't get distracted by any other particular group that's trying to pull you down a different path. Once you come into this clear understanding and knowledge of where the actual promised land or the land of Canaan was and is, then you should keep your focus on that, because biblical prophecies are going to be fulfilled based on this actual geographic location. Okay? So, we also want to mention, based on the current maps of Africa and some of the old ones, there is particular boundaries that were given, right? In Genesis chapter 15. And it says the borders of the promised land. It's the river of Egypt, which we know flows down through here, okay? Nowhere near this region where they're calling Israel. So we got the river of Egypt. We have something called the river Euphrates, and we'll go back to the great river soon. But the river Euphrates. And you know, the river Euphrates, they have placed up here. I'm not trying to deny that maybe this is also called the river Euphrates, but I also want to show you where the Great River is. The Great River is located here based on old maps of Africa. Okay, this is the Great River Channel. All right. So we have that distinction going on. And I've had some people who probably were indigenous to the African, to the continent, to the father's land, who said that this great river was also known to be called the River Euphrates. And once again, like I said, I believe this is the original. Um, and maybe the name was given over here, but I have no doubt that our Heavenly Abba, when He said the promised land, He's covering a whole region, which a huge portion is here. Okay? This is the land that's rich with milk and honey. All right? I'm not disregarding this region. Okay? But I'm specifically focusing, and as far as Surgical Bible Studies is concerned, based on biblical prophecy, this is the most important part of this region. All right? There's destruction that's prophesied along this edge here, that's close to the coastline. And like we've said before, we pray people get out and escape that destruction whenever it's to come. We don't know how close or when. But when you go and look in these lessons, we show you how this great river channel is called by an etymology called Berisa, and the people indigenous to that region. And when that word is translated, Berisa or Isa Beri is translated into the Great River. So that's a part of the boundaries. Okay, Body Messiah, we're going to cover one last part, okay? Okay, Body Messiah. What I'm going to share with you is extremely exciting. Well, for me, hopefully it will be for you also. When we covered inside your Code Bible Studies, Africa throughout the Bible, on part 4, many of these cities here, we cover Bethlehem, Nazareth, that Bethany is there, Beersheba. But there are other people, by the grace of the Most High God, who have versions of the map, ancient African maps that I have not seen. And I was only able to see when I came across their channel. So I want to share this particular brother with you guys. This YouTube channel, go to Bonafide Israel. Okay? Bonafide Israel. Now, in our Africa Throughout the Bible, TBON Lesson 2, Part 4, we cover a lot of the cities. We cover a city that's Gazabella. But in his version of the map that he has, he's rolling it out and he's showing the map and expanding, getting close views of this particular old map that the colonizers generated. And he's asking people if they see any other things on there that he hasn't seen yet. But this is something that we didn't notice 3 years ago, or we definitely would have shared it with all of you, okay? But Jerusalem, okay? There are many descendants of African who said there is a Jerusalem or Jerusalem in Africa that was known in old times, okay? And a area that you'll see in the map that says Gaza. Isn't that something? So over in this region is where you will see it on that map. And I encourage you, please go to channels like his and others where they have these maps and they actually are showing a picture of it, as we did when we did TBON Lesson 2, Part 6, okay? We have a Part 6 through 9 where we were holding up pictures of what we saw, all right? The reason why I'm encouraging you to do this is because the enemy is so cunning. He will try to destroy and remove everything. And these are actual evidence. Maybe you can download the videos so you will have copies of the map so we can proceed in truth. Now, I want you to notice in this scripture, Judges chapter 1, verse 8. It specifically says in this scripture that Judah came down against Jerusalem. This is when they're overtaking the land of Canaan. So this city was called Jerusalem of time of old, before it was definitively, clearly called a part of the promised land. So it was in its origin called Jerusalem here in the Father's land. Before, people began to branch out or what have you, and they renamed another area. All right? I believe God's prophecy is perfect, and he knew what was going to be prophesied over this area was going to happen just as well as this area. Okay? Um, so this is what you'll read in Judges chapter 1, specifically where you see the name Jerusalem when they're overtaking the land of Canaan. Also, we've covered the mountain of God, as it's mentioned in scriptures. You know, when Elisha um, went to the mountain of God, we got these scriptures here. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 8, Exodus 19, 1 through 3. There's a Mount Kenya. We also share with you that the name of this Mount Kenya is called Karenega. Karenega is translated to the seat of God. They also talk about in these scriptures the mountain of God. We believe that's here, okay? Mount Kenya, which is known as Mount Karenega, also the seat of God, okay? These things are specific to only the Father's land. This is the land of Canaan. Please review and go through these lessons. We're going to attach links to the old videos for you. And also try and get a link to Bonafide Israel, okay, where they're sharing the original Jerusalem, which is the first, okay? And then this is what we believe became the second named city of Jerusalem, all right? So, Body Messiah, this is exciting. As you look at this with fresh eyes, please review the prophecies of Joel, the last chapter, and Obadiah chapter 1, which we went over in Surgical Bible Studies, so you can get a fresh understanding of these biblical prophecies according to the entire truth of Adonai's word. Well, Body Messiah, thank you so much for joining us. And as we always say, may Adonai Elohim cover and surround you and your family, shield and protect you all, and envelop you all with his shalom peace. Goodbye.